The African American Legend series highlights the accomplishments of blacks in areas as varied as politics, aviation, business, and sports. We will explore how African Americans have succeeded in areas where they'd been previously excluded because of segregation, racism, and lack of opportunity. I'm your host, Dr. Roscoe C. Brown, Jr. Joining us on today's program are William Pop Gates and John Isaacs, stars of the New York Renaissance basketball team, the first professional world championship basketball team back in 1939. John Isaacs, tell us how the Renaissance were formed and why they're called the Renaissance.
Well, from my early recollections, Bob Douglas was a sports-minded person. His primary sport was soccer, and from playing soccer a lot, one day he eventually wound up in an area where some basketball was being played. And these are things that he told me himself and things that I read. However, Bob became so involved with watching this basketball game that he decided he wanted to get involved in it. Now, at that time, there weren't any particular leagues, but they created an amateur league which included the Smart Set from Brooklyn, the Red and Black Machine from St. Philip's, the Lowendi Club from Pittsburgh, or numerous other clubs, and they formed their own little league, and they played day in, day out. Eventually, some of the outstanding players started receiving money, and this was back in 1923, when we talk of professionalism. On the strength of what was happening, the team sort of broke down and they sort of disintegrated a bit. Bob decided that he would like to continue, which he did, but he wanted to call his team the Spartans, which was his club, the soccer club. He went to the Renaissance Casino on 138th Street on 7th Avenue, and he spoke to the gentleman, and he wanted to know whether he would allow him to use the Renaissance. And one thing led to another, and he showed the man where it would be beneficial for both of them. He would even go so far as to change his name from the Spartans to the Renaissance ballroom name. And this is exactly what Bob did.
Well, Bob Douglas is really a legend in the African American community. What he did with the New York Renaissance Ballroom, which was the premier place to have social events and dances during the 20s and 30s, and then, of course, the New York Renaissance basketball team, which ended up being the first professional team to win the World's Professional Championship in 1939. And you were on that team, and so was William Pop Gates. Pop Gates is in the Basketball Hall of Fame. He has so many distinctions. People talk about Michael Jordan and so on. If Pop had been playing in these times, or Michael in these times, Michael would have had a hard time keeping up with Pop Gates. So tell us a little about how it feels to be in the Hall of Fame and some of the things that you did which got you into the Basketball Hall of Fame.
Well, it's a wonderful feeling to be selected to be in the Hall of Fame, one of the premier Hall of Fame situations in the country. Being in the Hall of Fame to me is something everybody would like to accomplish in the sport they participated in. I got started in the Hall of Fame because of the fact one day in 1988, a fellow by the name of Bobby McDermott made the Hall of Fame. I had never given a thought about being in the Hall of Fame because they wasn't taking us that easily in that situation.
Because of the time difference. They were taking more recent players.
Bobby got in 1988, and that was during the era. He played during the era where I played at, or John played at. So a fellow told me, Pops, why don't you try to get the Hall of Fame? I said, forget about that. They're not going to accept me. So thought came to mind, well, I'll send a resume of what I accomplished, what I've did by 17 years of playing professional basketball. So I got together, wrote this thing down, put a big booklet form resume together, and sent this resume to probably 6 or 7 Hall of Famers and other people around the country I knew that were well known in basketball. And consequently, but you know what happened? I got in the Hall of Fame, but you know what I forgot to send a resume to? The Hall of Fame people itself. So, however, the following year, I received a phone call from, who's the fellow's name?
Joe O'Brien.
Oh, Joe O'Brien.
Oh, it wasn't Lee Williams, was it?
No,
Lee Williams was there for TARS.
No, but it was Joe O'Brien.
Joe O'Brien.
And so they called me in the morning and said, is Pop Gates? I said, yes, this is Pop Gates. So may I speak to you? Yes, go right ahead. So, well, I'm so-and-so, I'm the president of the Hall of Fame. I'd like to inform you that you have been selected to be in the Hall of Fame. I said, oh, you must be kidding. So I said, oh, thank you very much. I'm very elated. So that and how is how I got in the Hall of Fame. I sent my resume in 1988. And the following year, in 1899, I was selected to the Hall of Fame.
Now, tell us what are some of the things that you did. I know you're very modest, Pop, but tell us some of the things that you did. I know you were a high school basketball star, and you went right from high school to the Renaissance.
Yes. I went to Benjamin Franklin High School. In 1938, we won the city championship at New York City. The following year, I had a tryout with the New York Renaissance. Previous to that, I went down to Clark University, Atlanta, Georgia, to play basketball there. I never played basketball there, but I played football. But however, I became disenchanted with what was happening there, so I decided I wanted to come home because I couldn't stand this segregation, even though I was born in Alabama in the South. But I said, well, I'm going to come home. So I sent some friends of mine, because we were poor people, my family. And I sent some friends of mine to send me a car fare to get home. A friend of my mother's, a fellow by the name of Older Joseph, Arthur Joseph. He had the Black Yankees or Harlem Yankees basketball team. So they sent me a car fare to get home. So I was working out with the Renaissance, working out with the Black Yankees, Harlem Yankees rather, operating against the Renaissance. So Bob Douglas and Eric Illich saw what I was able to do, and therefore that's how I got the break of getting with the New York Renaissance.
And then you played for 17 years, and you were obviously participating in the World Championship team, but also you made some statistical records. Your scoring was outstanding.
Well, according to the Hall of Fame historians, in the 17 years I participated, in 6 of those years as a player coach, that I had participated in 2,000 ball games and made double figures in all of those ball games. That's putting me in the 20,000 market figures and 2,000 ball games, what a lot of kids can't do now. I was also fortunate enough to be selected as one of the first blacks in organized sports in 1947 with the National Basketball League with the Tri-City Blackhawks, Dolly King with the Rochester Barons, Royals Ball Club. But prior to this, 46, they had another group of ball players from the Harlem Globetrotters that played in the National Basketball, also organized basketball, also before I got there. So this enchantment about who was first, it goes back to before me. They had great ball players like Bernie Price, Babe Presley, Duke Cumberland, Bernie Price. All these guys should be in the Hall of Fame, also along with John Isaacs and many others.
See, this is one of the things that we have found as we talk with legends in this program. We talk with legends in all fields, in education and economics and politics and entertainment. The history of African Americans, of course, goes back 300 years in this country. And for most of those years, African Americans have been involved in every aspect of our nation's history, in the military, in politics, in sports, and entertainment, and business. Because of the history of segregation, African Americans have not been recognized until very, very recently. Now we have the former chief of the General Chief of Staff, General Colin Powell, where certainly Michael Jordan is one of the most outstanding figures in the entire world, Muhammad Ali, and the like. You folks were pioneers. You probably didn't realize you were pioneers, just like I, as a Tuskegee Airman, didn't realize I was a pioneer flying fighter planes in World War II. But you won the World Championship in 1939. John Isaac, could you tell us a little about this, because it was the first professional basketball World Championship. There were 2 black teams involved, and the rest of the teams obviously were white. And the New York Renaissance won. Could you lead us into that?
You know, when we were eventually selected to play, my statement always was that not in your wildest dream did you think they were going to put the Wrens and the Trotters in opposite brackets. Yes. Heaven forbid, if you both should win, what would be left? So it wound up that, sure enough, we wound up both in the same bracket, and in our draw, after our first game, the second game was with the Trotters. We beat the Trotters, so that almost automatically put you into the semifinals, which we wound up being in the semifinals. and we went on and played Oshkosh, Wisconsin. Well, we had played them often enough up in Oshkosh and surrounding towns in Wisconsin. But it was amazing that with all the big people that they had, we were able to contain them, because the type of game that we played against the type of game that they played, ours was keeping the ball off the floor, passing and setting people up and playing tough defense. They never could understand that. So the end result was that we beat Oshkosh 34-25. And it was like a shocker for most people, because the question always asked was, who was your coach? And when we tell them we had never had a coach, which is true. We didn't have a coach. We had players that came and brought things that they contributed. And from the strength of doing that, we were able to survive. You know, when you play every night in the week and twice on Sundays, this tells you something about when they talk about character. This team has character. The Celtics have character. I don't know what we had. If that wasn't character, what was it?
Let's take a moment and look at a tape of what happened in Chicago in 1939.
While Cusey was first learning the game on the playgrounds of Queens, William Pop Gates was becoming a basketball legend. After starring at Benjamin Franklin High School, Pop gained fame with the Harlem Renaissance as he led them to a phenomenal 68 consecutive wins. Defeating the original Celtics and the Globetrotters, the Rings won basketball's first pro championship. And Pop Gates gained recognition as one of the greatest players of his era.
To put this in context for people who watch the NBA now, the 82 games and so on, professional basketball back in the 30s really was composed of individual teams that didn't belong necessarily to a league, but did what we call barnstorm, travel all over the country playing, as you said, John, every night, and as a result you played many of the teams that you faced in the World Championship. Many of the teams, maybe even most of the teams that you folks played on these barnstorming were white teams. Is that right, Pop?
That's correct. See, we started playing basketball, the season began about early part of November, and we started November, won't end up until March or May or something like that. We played 130 ball games a year, sometimes twice on Saturday and Sunday. But during that period of time, they had several leagues also, like the New York City area, Eastern Quartet, the American League, the National League, and so forth, and all like that. They had great teams there, but they weren't accepting us at the top into leagues even then. So Bob Douglas got together with his thoughts and said, well, the only way we can make it was assemble a great ball club with great ball players, and we will have to travel over the country to participate, let the people know what we could do. But what I would like to say is this, that a lot of kids, or like anything else in the walk of life, or anybody, if you don't learn the basic fundamentals of sports or things you do, you're cutting yourself short. So when you get there, you better try to learn and do things that you know is going to be beneficial to you and also to life. You're talking about coaching. John was talking about coaching. Well, my high school coach, Bill Spiegler, Benjamin Franklin, he's taught us definitely basic fundamental type of basketball. When I got to the Renaissance, they had already been playing that type of basketball automatically. So it was easy for me to follow them because they were doing what I was taught to do by another guy.
This is what they call now hit the open man, move the ball around and get it to somebody who has a good shot. And at that time, I believe you would use the two-hand set shots.
Well,
basically, tell us about that.
The important thing, they got the two-hand set shot. They had fellas back at that time shoot the one-hand shot, hike these orders in one. So a lot of boys traveled throughout the West, shoot the shot, the one-hand ball shot, but it wasn't predominant as now. But the main objective to participate in a sport is to get that ball in a little hole down each end of the basketball court. However you do it, do it. And you got to do it with knowledge, the ability, the basic fundamentals, block it out, do it where your man is, and do it where all men are on that floor, all 9 other men are on that floor at the same time. These are things you got to do because instinctively, it comes to you when you do these things instinctively when you play basketball as you learn your trade.
Well, let me ask this, John. Other than height, because today's players are taller and heavier because of the vitamins and the baby boom and like, do you guys think you could play in the NBA today?
Well, after I look at some of the clubs that are playing, yes,
You
because
could probably play today because you're in great shape yourself.
no, I'm looking at the standpoint of what Pop just spoke on. We had the smarts and we had the knowledge, because when I first came to the Wrens, they were playing muscle basketball, you know, and at that time a lot of people weren't aware that there was a league, an American league, and they had a rule which was you dribble with two hands. They call it monkey dribble or whatever, but it was two hands. You could go laterally as many steps as you wanted. You could only go forward as many as you wanted. Backwards, you could only take one dribble, putting the ball on the floor. However, once you got into the post position, you couldn't stop, hesitate, and fake. You had to take your shot immediately. So when, like Pop said, when I came to the Wrens, I wasn't used to that muscle, even though I had to play it because there I was playing with fellas. And, you know, when I got to the Wrens, Bob Douglas said he wanted to see me, and I kept avoiding. I wouldn't go. I was playing stickball, well, really, Roscoe, baseball was my game. Basketball? I can't nothing about basketball. What's that? And I watched it and watched it, and eventually I learned to like the game and watching the older fellas and playing with them. But going to the Wrens, you know, things that we did, and I said, no, we can't do this any longer. Fat Jenkins was my roommate, incidentally, and things that we would do.
He was the guard on the Wrens, and
he was the captain.
He moved the ball around, right?
But he was so quick. I think he was the fastest man, with the exception at that time, Vic Hansen, who was from Syracuse, was considered the fastest thing on the basketball court. Fats lost the ball, and Vic Hansen had it on the way down the court. Fats reversed, ran him down at the other end of the court, and got the ball from him before he could take it, put it back up. But eventually, like Pop said, from playing together and watching, everybody, it was like each one teach one. What I came with and donated to the group, we all meshed in, and we all bought into the, you know.
Well, who made the substitutions? I had the occasion as a young man to watch the Renaissance play, and I never could figure out who was coaching the team.
Well, Fats as captain, Fats as captain would make the substitutions, but it always wound up that I'd always try to avoid, because I had bone bruises in my heels and a whole lot of other different things. And when Pop would decide who was going to start, it was always, let's see what's in vogue.
Fat.
Yeah, fat. Hey, let's see what's in vogue for tonight. And he would say, Mr. Smith, Mr. Cooper, Mr. Graves, Mr. So-and-so, and I'd be hiding behind Cooper and Smith. He said, and yes, and you, Mr. Isaacs. And I was,
Well, see, let me get this straight or clarify the thing. Ball players at our time were very good ball players also. They might not be overall as tall as they are now, but they had the upstairs in their head. They had the brains. They knew the know-how. And we knew what we were doing. So you had guys there, Def could play. All our team could play presently now. All other teams, the white, all the black teams could play in this game now, because we play the game as supposed to be played, as is written down in the book, basically, football access to the game you do. They don't do this stuff. A lot of these kids are great ball players. A lot of them are great with the potential. But a lot of them just play basketball. They don't know how to play.
That's why some of the coaches have a tough time with some of the stars. The stars might be making 25 points a game and doing very sensational shots. But in order to make those sensational shots, sometimes they have to ignore somebody who's right under the basket who would make it easier shot.
You got to get by me to make your shot. You got to get by him. They're not going to get by the easy, because they're going to have to learn a lesson to get by it. We know how to play defense. A lot of people say, play defense, I'll watch the guy by the hips. And you play off this, elbow distance. I'll go by a sucker like that any day of the week. People, that stupid play me that kind of way. You play off distance, and you watch the only thing that's going to carry the person where he's going. What is that? His feet.
Feet. There
not
you
the
go.
body.
That's right.
You watch that. You match your left foot with his right foot, vice versa. And you play the angle of the basket. They don't do this.
See, I want to make you a coach. We need you in some places.
I was a coach for 6 years.
I know that. I know that. Let's talk about what this means to today's kids. I know there's been a thesis written entitled "The New York Renaissance Professional Black Basketball Team, 1923 to 1950" by Susan Rail at Penn State University. Now, this is a tome of 500 pages of the history of the Wrens year by year, how they were started, the interaction between the players, etc. It seems to me that African American and other youth from other ethnic groups should know about this, because this is really the history of the way basketball got started, the way African Americans made contributions, and what you folks did in your generation. You're in the Hall of Fame, you are well respected as a leader in the Boys and Girls Club, but the opportunities for you folks to move into coaching ranks, general managers, didn't exist. The same thing is true today, that if these young men and women now who are playing professional basketball don't attend to some of the details like getting on time, reading the contract, respecting people, respecting the media, they may have a lot of money, but they will not make the contribution that they could make. You have worked in the Riverton, you've worked with youth, and you've worked in the Boys and Girls Club at Hoe Avenue. You've made a contribution that transcends any money that you may have made. What message, I'll ask each one of you, what message do you have for the youth? I'll start with Pop.
Well, the first message I would have with any kid or any person coming up today, number one, listen to your mother, and your father, and your parents. Do what they would want you to do, what they would want you to do. Go to school, get your education, because basketball or any other sport is just a short rate of time, but a very few make it to the top. So you may be good at high school or college, but you can't cut it in the pros. So my most important thing I think a kid should do is get your education and have respect and give respect to all people, not just your own, everybody else, and it's the same in the reverse, vice versa. Without respect and knowledge, we're not going to get nowhere. With respect and knowledge, you'll go as far as you want to go.
Well, I hate to just keep reiterating what Pop has said, but education is really one of the components that needs to be stressed. But usually when I talk to young people, and I try not to ever refer to them as kids, because my statement always is, and I brought this up yesterday, I said, we constantly hear about kids. I said, these young people were not born of goats. They were born of human beings. I said, why don't we refer to them as young people, youngsters, teenagers, whatever have you? So normally when I speak to them, my thing that I speak to them about is attitudes, respect, responsibility, and exposure. I said, now each one of us is responsible for our own immediate actions as a responsible person. Attitudes, you can't have a big ego and think that everyone's going to, as the kids would say, suck it up. They're not going to do it. Respect means that you have to respect yourself first before anybody is going to give you respect. Once you start respecting yourself, you will get it, because respect is earned. No one walks up and puts it on your arm and says, Pop, Roscoe, here's some respect. So little by little, they're getting an understanding of what we're trying to talk about. I said, because those that are in agencies like I'm in, I wish you would just say to them that we are not the enemy.
I would like to add to this here. When I came to New York City from the state of Alabama, where I was born, my parents were janitors. We slept and had our apartment in the basement. I learned how to tend the furnace, take that stove off the street, take the ash can up the stairs. I went out and shined shoes, made my own shoe shine box. I sold paper for 2 cents, got a nickel for a dime. Nowadays, kids can get $1.25, $1.50 a shine. You got to do a lot of things to make it, but do something. Better yourself. And nowadays, they call a janitor. For 17 years of my life, I was underground because we were janitors. I slept in coal beds. We made a bedroom out of a coal bed. But you got to keep trying.
See, one of the
You know
things,
what I think, excuse me, Ross, you know what I think about when people started talking about basketball and how wonderful it is? I said, understand just one thing. It's about money. It's not about whether the game is refined or not. I said, many play this game. Few understand it. I said, I understand it. Quite a few others understand it. But when we're talking about basic fundamentals, and I said, this applies in life, and exactly what Pop said, and I had said to you earlier, Once the air goes out of that ball, what is it that you have that's going to maintain you? You don't want to go to school. You don't want to listen. You know, you have bad attitudes. You have bad work habits. You know, so I can't constantly walk you through life. You have to make your own footprints.
It's just as John was stating, Roscoe, excuse me, I was very fortunate also when I was a kid that my parents also enlisted me and joined me into the Harlem YMCA. My first, that started at the age of 8, my first 12, 13 years playing in basketball, I learned all of this at the YMCA with an organization that was worthwhile and good.
Well, certainly you two men, Pop Gates and John Isaacs, are individuals that everyone in our community can look up to, not only because of your basketball exploits, but what you believe about life. I wish every African-American, every American young person could see, hear, and talk with you young men, and I call you young men because you carry those messages ahead. Our guests today have been Pop Gates and John Isaacs of the New York Rens basketball team.